Raise your hand if you primarily use your serger to finish your seams. Now, keep your hand raised if you also use it to sew knit fabric with mixed results. Did you know that by making some minor adjustments and altering the number of threads you use, your serger is capable of so many more stitches? I know, I couldn't quite believe it either. Today I'm sharing how you can change up the number of threads you use with some settings on your machine to unlock a variety of stitches, and I'm going to tell you how to use them. So keep watching. Hi, I'm Tony. This is So Lounge, and the rookie mistake you're making is only using your serger to finish your seams and occasionally sew knit fabric. And I know because I'm totally guilty of this too. I have had this really nice baby lock, Acclaim, for over a year, and all I've done with it is sew a few knit dresses and pretty much finish all the seams on everything I've made over the last year. There are so many more possibilities. I'm excited to share them with you today, so let's head over to the serger. If you have never seen an air threader work, I'm going to do a quick demo just so you can kind of see what that looks like. In case you're in the market and price range for this type of a serger, I have had an old serger for a very long time. I felt like it was time to upgrade, especially since it was causing so much grief with tension and other problems like that. For me, it was worth it. And this is the machine I'm going to be using to demonstrate all the stitches today. So let me just quickly get this unthreaded. So the cool thing about these is that you just kind of drag the thread through the top. You lock it in, it's going to make a snapping noise. And then you just pull it through, catch it here on this loop. And then I'm going to pull out some of my thread, get it lined up here with this looper. I'm going to repeat this for the purple one. So this is the beauty of it. If you've ever threaded a manual overlocker, it's done. So that's exactly how much time it took. You can see here that the threads are all kind of bunched up at the bottom because they blasted through. There is the upper looper, here is the lower looper. I'm just going to pull those to the back. I'm going to go back up and grab my right needle, get that locked in. I'm going to let that hang for a sec because I am putting the left needle in as well. So, so I've got these both lined up. Let's go down so you can see how awesome this part is. Line up the end of that thread with the eye of the needle. Okay, that has that one caught. Repeat with the left needle. Just have to put it up there next to that eye. And then you do that, and both needles are threaded. Voila, it's ready to get going. Before we get started, let me just go over a couple of things to note if you are super new to using your serger. And I didn't know this either, so I'm thinking that it might be news to a lot of people. So first off, the thing that makes sergers different from sewing machines is that you're not actually sewing. It's more like knitting. So you're taking the lower looper threads, which are the ones that are going back and forth that actually make the loops on your fabric, and you're kind of wrapping the edge of the fabric with that. And then the left and the right needles go down and catch them in the fabric to secure them. So to make things a little bit easier, I am using different colored thread. Upper is green, upper looper is purple, right needle is blue, and left needle is red. And I just started doing this for prep for this video and practicing some of these stitches. And let me tell you, it really makes a difference to be able to see what's going on in which thread is where and making sure they're in the right place if they are all different colors. I've never done this before, and let me tell you, sewing with white thread or black thread and trying to figure out a problem, it's so much more difficult than it needs to be. Try this out with multicolored threads, and you can thank me later. First step we're going to do is a basic overlock stitch. So this is using all 4 threads, and we are just going to sew together two pieces of fabric to form a seam and finish the edge at the same time. Now, the beauty of this method is that if you have a fabric that ravels and you're going to have to go finish that seam allowance anyway, why not just do it from the beginning? So this is the basic overlock stitch. You can see that the red thread is the left needle, the blue thread is the right needle, the purple is the upper looper, and then if we flip it over, we can see on the back is the bottom looper, and you can see the little tiny stitch lines where it's caught by the left and right needles. If you look at it from the edge, that middle line is where the threads are all looping together, and that's what you want it to look like. Nothing is hanging off the edge, so that is just a basic stitch. Once you open it up, you don't really see it from the other side. This is muslin, so it's a little bit of a loose weave, but you know, press that open, press that seam to one side, and you're going to be good to go. If you've tried sewing knits on your serger with mixed results, like I have, it's probably because you didn't adjust the differential feed. Now you may be going, what? Yeah, I did that too. The differential feed is the speed that the front feed dog moves in relation to the back feed dog. So in case you didn't know, there are two feed dogs in your serger, one at the front, one at the back. And when your machine is set to neutral, they both move at the same speed. If it's higher than neutral, the front feed dog pushes more fabric faster to the back feed dog so that when it goes through the needle, it's gathering or bunching up the fabric together. And if it's below neutral, then it's going slower than the back feed dog, and that means it's going to pull the fabric a little bit tight so that it's taut as it goes through the needles. I'm using this Lyocell spandex blend. This is a 4-way stretch. It is not super stretchy. It's about 5% spandex, so it's not one of these super active wear type stretches, but it does stretch in both directions. And I'm going to set my differential feed to 1.3, so that's the first setting just above neutral. Because this is not super stretchy, I think that'll be good, but we'll see. This is the whole process of using your serger, is testing out different differential feeds for your fabric. It's also about adjusting the stitch length and width. If your machine is not fully computerized, like mine is not, I have all the threading and the tension computerized, or you know, it does it itself, but I still have to adjust the length and width of all the stitches. So I'm going with a length of 2.5 and a width of 6. When I checked my manual, that was on the lower edge for this type of stretch seam, and so we're going to see how it goes. So you can see that my knit fabric is not stretched out. This is the lengthwise grain that I'm sewing along like I would if I was sewing a regular seam. You can see how nice it looks from the right side. It's not puckering or anything. This is going to give my seam a little bit more stretch with the 4-way overlock, but still be very secure. Now that you have an idea of just basic overlocking to sew your stitches instead of sewing on your machine and then going back and finishing all your edges, plus an easier way to sew your knit fabric together. Moving on to the other thing you can do with 4 cones of thread and 2 needles. This is the one that kind of surprised me the most because I didn't really even know this was a thing you could do on a serger. And it does relate to the differential feed because gathering is not one of my strong points. And when I was making my tiered skirt and having to gather all of those different layers to connect in, it took forever and my gathers were not even. Enter the serger to take care of that for you, so you have beautiful even gathers that will line up with your pattern pieces and look perfect. Okay, so I have my differential feed up on 2. I'm using a single layer of fabric because that's what we're going to do when we gather. Let me scooch this over so I cut off a little bit of the edge over here. So it's all gathered, and you can see how nice and even they are. So this would have saved me so much time when I was making that skirt, because then I wouldn't have had to hand gather everything. And you can adjust the length and the width to make this tighter or looser as you like. This is just kind of the standard one that I use. Using the exact same settings, but I changed the differential feed to neutral. This I did by accident because I forgot to change the differential feed. But if you go in and you pull out the red and the green threads, these are the needle threads. So if you pull those out and then you hold them, you can gather the fabric yourself. So this is when it would be really great to ease in the top of your sleeve and get that curve in and adjust it the way you need to so that everything fits, but then you'd have a nice finished seam on your sleeve as well. So those are 4 different uses for a 4-thread overlock. So you can do a regular overlock seam to sew wovens together, let's say they're ravelly, and a neutral differential feed. You can use the same stitch, maybe adjust it a little bit for the weight of your knit as far as length and width goes, to sew your knits and finish those edges and still have the stretch by adjusting the differential feed above neutral. And then you can also do gathering on single layers of fabric with the very highest differential feed it'll go to above neutral. That's a 2 on my machine. And then if you set the stitch length and width the same as the recommendations for your machine, leave it at neutral, you can gather it yourself. Moving on to 3 threads. Now, you can do these overlock stitches with 3 threads in either a narrow or a wide stitch width, and the difference is going to be which needle you use. So if I had kept in my left needle and taken out the right, it would be a wide stitch. If I keep in the right and take out the left, then it's going to be narrow. And since I took out the left needle, moving forward we're going to be using the right needle. I'm going to be doing a narrow stitch, and you can just kind of see the difference. Now, you'd use this stitch when you want a finer seam finish. So if you think that the 4 thread is a little chunky for the type of fabric, let's say you're using a lightweight fabric like a lawn or a file or one of those very lightweight plain weave fabrics, you might not want that much bulk in the seams. It may be adding a lot to the garment unnecessarily, so you can switch over to a 3-thread narrow overlock to finish those seams. You can also do the same thing with stitching, just basic seaming work and finishing that edge at the same time if that's appropriate for your fabric. This is the 3-thread overlock. You can see it's a lot narrower, and from the inside, if I can get this open, it pretty much looks the same. So there you go. Next up is the 3-thread rolled hem. Now, it's just like it sounds, but you don't have to use a foot or anything fancy. All you have to do is drop the blade, because basically what's going to happen is that the loops are going to catch and it's going to roll that edge of your fabric under and then tighten it all together so you have a nice rolled hem without having to mess with any additional presser feet. When you're doing a rolled hem, you want to line up your fabric alongside of this cutting blade, which is now down, so it will not cut your fabric, but you want it to be lined up there so then it rolls properly. What it's going to look like when it's finished, and this is great for finishing very lightweight fabrics, difficult ravelly fabrics. This is actually the finish I used for my wedding dress because the fabric was raveling and there was no way to do any other type of hem on it. But you can see it's a very neat finish and it looks really nice. Next up is the 3-thread flatlock seam. Now, I did not even know Sergers could do this at all. My mind was blown when I took this class and they showed us how to do this. I'm getting set up to do a 3-thread flatlock, which means I need to change the way that the machine is being threaded so that everything works properly. And this is kind of the funky part. So I'm going to cut off my right needle thread. I'm going to pull it through. So I'm going to pull it through the same channel as the upper looper. But it's not going into the bottom. It's still going to come over to the right needle. Okay, so here's the cool part, right? You got your stitch, it's sewn. And then when you fold it open, you got stitches to the other side. And then you can just press the seam allowance over to one side and you kind of have a decorative stitch, and it's a flat locked seam on the back. Now that you know what we can do with 3 threads, let's take it down a notch to 2 threads. And for this to work, you need to engage the thread converter. If you don't have this thread converter, you are not going to be able to do this seam because, you know, your machine just doesn't have it. You have to have this part of it for this to all work. It does require some rethreading. Now, what I'm going to do is the narrow one, since I've got my right needle in, if I wanted this to be a wider flat lock, 2-thread flat lock, I could switch back to the left needle and then it would be a little bit different thread configuration, but I'm just going to do this for now. Let me show you what I'm talking about and rethread my machine. I am going to cut off this blue thread and this purple thread. The lower looper is going to stay where it is with the green thread. I'm going to just pull these all out. So now what I want to do is take the right needle. We're going to come down into this far left port, which would be for the upper looper. But we're not going down to the upper looper. We're going to come across. I'm just going to thread my right needle like it's supposed to be threaded. And the thing that's important is that this mechanism needs to be engaged down here. So let me zoom in so you can see it a little bit better. This is what we're talking about. It's this little guy down here. I think he kind of looks like a little toucan. For my machine, I'm going to pull it out and then flip it over. You can see how it kind of looks like a little toucan now. This is the thread converter. So basically what's going to happen is this is going to loop back over the lower looper. So instead of having an upper and lower looper that are looping together, the lower loop's just going to loop on itself, and you need this little mechanism to make that happen. This is the 2-thread flat lock, and I'm doing it narrow because I'm using my right needle. If I wanted it to be wider, I could use my left needle. It's pretty similar to the one we just did with the 3-thread, but it's a little bit more lightweight. Both sides are going to be green and blue, and so you can see that they're flipped over. It's blue one side, green on the other. And then when we open it, it's the same kind of stitches showing from the front. And this is kind of the cool part when you flip it back over. So I can just even those all out. This is if you just wanted to add like a decorative stitch or just a design element. You could do this in the same color as the fabric and it would be less obvious. And then once you flip it to the back, the whole thread line is green. All of the blue threads have been pulled to the outside, which were from the needle, and all of the lower looper threads are what is holding it together on the back side. So the other one I want to show you is going to be using this far left thread. I'm going to go back to threading again. Okay, we're still using our stitch converter up here, except now we are going to be using this red stitch. So this is the thread that would be for the left needle. We're going down into the port for the upper looper, okay? Now this is where it gets a little crazy. I'm going to pretend like I'm threading it for the upper looper. Okay, so that's in there. And then what I'm going to do is turn off the threading. So that's when these little ports here slide back, okay? And what I'm going to do is catch that red thread. And now, because this is so crazy, I'm going to pull it up here into this thread holder and I'm going to go thread it through the needle. So it's kind of doing this funky thing where it's going into the upper loop or port, but then it's coming out right here and going into the needle threading, and hopefully this does not break my thread. Okay, so I messed this up because it's supposed to be the left needle, not the right needle. So let me just undo this real quickly. Now we're golden. Everything is set. The stitches are all to where they're supposed to be. And I have my left needle threaded to make the magic happen. To make this blanket stitch, we are using some, this is wash away embroidery stabilizing film. So I'm gonna lay that on the right side of my fabric. This is some fleece that I made a jacket for grandma with. And if I had known about this, I would have used this stitch to finish the edges because I think she'd like that. I'll probably make her another one and then use some of my new serger techniques for that. So this is a little slippery, so you kind of gotta get it lined up where you want it to be. I let it come off the edge a little bit so that I'm not having problems with it. Okay, let me get that down. And then I'm gonna hold it and start stitching. So let's zoom in a little bit so you can see this a little bit closer. We've got this on here, right? And it looks like this on the back. And then you're gonna pull the stabilizer film to make a faux blanket stitch along the edge. So you see, if that was the edge of a jacket, it would have this really pretty little stitch line that you don't have to go do by hand. This is what the back looks like. And then you just can use a spray bottle and just spray along this edge and pull all this off. You have a really awesome blanket stitch. That's another one that blew my mind. I want to show you some of these stitches side by side so you kind of have a better idea of the differences between them so you can pick the right one for the fabric and application that you're using. All right, so first up, this is a 4-thread overlock with the stitching. So this would be if you're using it to just sew seams and finish the edges at the same time. So that's the bottom. This is the top. Compared to, and I sewed this the wrong way, this is the 3-thread. So it is missing the red stitch line. This is the top. This is the bottom. So you can see the blue is on both sides. And then this is what the inside would look like. So it looks pretty much the same. It's just the width difference of the stitches. This one's also a little bit tighter, but you can kind of see the differences there. Next up, we have the knit overlock. So this is just a regular jersey knit and a 2-way stretch, not 4-way. This is the standard 4-thread overlock. It still has the same amount of stretch. This is the bottom. You can see it's definitely wider once you open it up into the seam. It stands up a little bit more, so it's a little bit more stable. You definitely want to use this if you're sewing like underarm seams because you know that's going to hold. So that's the one, and then this is the 3-thread. So that's the top, that's the bottom. You can see it is a lot thinner so that it's a lot less standing up because it's a lot smaller seam. So you can decide which one you would prefer. Here's a side-by-side comparison, depending on the weight of your fabric and what you're making. What I've shown you today is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to your serger's capabilities. Once you start adding in different presser feet, then you have opened up even more options. I have a blind hem foot, so that would be great for blind hemming. I also have an elastic foot. There's a beading foot. There is a gathering, ruffling foot. So check your manual, see what additional presser feet your serger can manage. And if you're interested in seeing a video about those additional techniques, please let me know. I was going through my book and I saw that you could put in a zipper with a serger. So I am fascinated by that. That is definitely something that will be coming up soon. In the meantime, there's another great video coming up next. You totally want to check it out. I know you're going to love it, and I'll see you over there.